Tom Allen, great hire by Penn State. I'll give it an A. But there's going to be some concerns with this one because every move it's not exactly perfect, right? You have to address some of the concerns that are going into this one. And we'll talk about just in the final segment how James Franklin is continuing to build an exceptional staff year in and year out, even with all the changes. But Allen specifically, right? Some of the drawbacks of this move are concerns that we need to address. What Allen was not that successful in Indiana. Okay. Had some good seasons, right? 2020 was good. Made some progress. 5-7, 5-7 in his first couple of seasons as a head coach, first time ever head coach at the Power 5 level, but was never great. Was never great. 33-49 overall as a head coach in Indiana, 18-43 in the Big 10. Yeah, not that. Nope, not that good. Only 2 seasons above 500 and finishing, and one of them was the COVID-19 season in 2020. 2-10, 4-8, 3-9. Those are the records for the last 3 seasons, ultimately leading to his demise and you're receiving the pink slip to not come back to be the Indiana Hoosiers head coach. So, okay, he wasn't the best head coach, right? But you're not asking him to lead a whole program anymore. He is simply responsible for making the defense as good as it can possibly be. And that's a good thing in this case, right? Some coaches might just not be cut out for head coaching or need that reset as we're starting to figure out that the Penn State defensive coordinator spot is really a way to relaunch your career in this case or get your career started, right? Brent Pry, head coach at Virginia Tech. Manny Diaz goes from Miami to Penn State, now to Duke. Tom Allen, could this be an opportunity for him to relaunch his career? Maybe, but he's responsible for one thing and one thing only: the defense, everything that goes into it. He doesn't have to do all the CEO stuff anymore. That's James Franklin. So, okay, he wasn't a good head coach, but he's been a pretty good defensive coordinator the years that he has been 2015, 2016, and then taking over as the head coach in Indiana when he was promoted. We got to address those defenses because this is the defensive minded guy. And I know what everybody's going to say in my comments. Zach, his defenses just weren't that good in Indiana. It was awful in 2023. 104th in points per game, 32 points allowed. 104th in yards per game, 419 yards allowed. 116th in red zone efficiency. 90.9% of the time, opposing offenses were scoring against Indiana. Awful in 2022 as well. 120th in points per game, 33.9 points allowed. Okay, I don't need to go any much further than that. Past few years have not been good for the Hoosiers, and they have not been good for Tom Allen defenses. So I talked about the numbers don't lie, right? The numbers don't lie. I said that earlier. But I have a lengthy response to this one, why people might say, well, Tom Allen's defenses, or he doesn't know what he's doing. He's not cut out for it. Okay. That's why I wanted to bring up his time as a defensive coordinator first before we actually address his time at Indiana. I chalk this one up to resources. Indiana, compared to Michigan, compared to Penn State, Ohio State, does not pour in the same resources to football as those schools do. Allen was able to recruit players to Indiana, but as we kind of saw, if you paid close attention to just Big Ten football in general, and Indiana maybe a little bit specifically, a lot of those players were difficult to retain in the age of the transfer portal, NIL. Indiana does not invest the same resources as a Penn State. So there's been lots of turnover on the defensive side of the football, particularly between the draft and players just young in their careers, guys that were highly touted recruits, leaving before they could really step up to the plate for a Tom Allen defense, just in general, Tom Allen offense too. IU, for whatever it's worth, does not have or refuses to use the resources to be competitive in this landscape. NIL, NIL transfer portal, whatever it is. Allen was also the lowest paid head coach in the Big Ten. So what does that tell you? They are just not concerned about being as competitive. Maybe that changes with Kurt Signetti, right? Maybe it changes. Okay. But for the time being, over the past 7 years, when Allen was the head coach in Indiana, just didn't have the exact support that he would like, right? So Indiana just does not care about investing into football as much as other schools in the Big Ten do. But now Allen has that. Allen has the resources to recruit the players that he would ideally like. He has the resources, the time to go coach the way that he wants to coach and doesn't have to run around doing a bunch of other things, right? The point I've already made. He's not being asked to manage as much. He's asked to hyper focus on something specific and has the resources and the backing and the support to accomplish those goals. So, yeah, those Indiana defenses weren't very good, but when Penn State's able to recruit the way that it can recruit, you plop Tom Allen now into a setting like Penn State, where Tom Allen was already able to do less with more with some of those Indiana defenses were pretty good in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 2020. What changed exactly? Well, I've already brought it up. Already brought it up. It's the fact that NIL and the transfer portal were introduced. I'm not trying to harp on those things. I'm not. They're here to stay. You either adapt or you get left behind. And what happened to Indiana? They refused to adapt, so they got left behind. That's the case here. And Tom Allen had to suffer as a result. They were doing pretty well. They were either staying around 500 or they did take that next step. 2019 and 2020, some of the best seasons for Indiana football. And then, boom, the entire landscape changes in a blink of an eye. And Indiana doesn't want to adapt. So, what happens? They get left behind in the arms race for college football. Penn State is adapting, has adapted enough, right? They've adapted enough. Not to the extent that everybody would like them to, but they have adapted. So from 2021 to 2023, Indiana was awful because of that point, because they weren't willing to do the things that they needed to get the recruits, to retain the current players. Now Tom Allen has all of that. And that's my point. He was able to do less with more as it was to begin with. Now he has all the more in the world at Penn State. Long-winded there, but another concern that people are probably going to bring up, he's got no connections to Pennsylvania. None whatsoever. Born and raised in Indiana, playing career there, and then he coached a little bit in Florida, right? And then coached in the SEC and then came back to be the head coach in Indiana. It makes sense, right? A little bit of a homecoming. Would this make him inclined to leave if an opportunity returned to an area that he's more familiar with? Or back in Indiana, if some job opens up that I feel like Indiana, right, is the top football job in this case. I guess maybe Purdue one day could open back up, right? But I'm not ultimately sure, and I'm not going to sit back and rank all the head coaching jobs that are available in Indiana. My point being is that this isn't sentimental for him. This is a business decision. This is simply to boost the resume, boost his career. Is this his end all? Well, could he leave in 2 to 3 years, right? We just saw this with Manny Diaz. Manny Diaz comes into Happy Valley, produces 2 elite defenses in back-to-back seasons, and says, I'm out. I'm going to be a head coach again. Does Tom Allen have similar aspirations? That's one of the first questions you got to ask him. One of the first questions I'd like to have for him when he sits down to interview, right? Once it is all official. This is all alleged, of course. So, does he want to be a head coach again? Does he view Penn State as an ending destination? I would say probably not at that part. Probably he wants to be a head coach once again. That's how most of these guys are. That really is. But the way that Penn State's defensive coordinator spot has shown that you can fix your career or set it on the right trajectory. It seems to be a relaunch spot, right? Who knows? Maybe he'll stay as Penn State's defensive coordinator for 4 or 5 years because that conversation is going to be had. And Penn State and James Franklin are going to try to do a good job convincing him. But you can't tell me that some Power Four, right? Some Power Four program could be calling, especially if this move is a slam dunk once again by Penn State and James Franklin.